So something that I've discovered that's come to light is we've had a lot of technology essentially hidden from us because there's a rather large financial incentive to keep people sick. And I think over the past few years, a lot of people, that's really obvious to a lot of people, and there's really no question about it anymore. But what are these technologies that were swept to the side? Well, I happen to have one right here. This is an electrostatic charge technology machine based on Rife, Tesla, and Lakhovsky. And I have a practitioner here that's been integrating this into his practice for quite a long time. And we're going to figure out what it is and what we use it for, because I just got it, I'm using it, but I would like to learn more on how to use it. So welcome, Andrew Scheim. Let me just bring you on right here. There we go. All right, so what is this thing and how does it work?
Sean, thank you for diving into this. God knows you're right. I'm just more puzzled, given the fact that we live in this new world where we can all communicate, still how people are not digging in and really going to the four corners of the earth to find some of these therapies. And that's essentially what happened with me on this therapy. Now, to give you a quick background, lightning as an alchemy is something I've worked with. Medical ozone, which you guys work with extensively, is simply lightning strikes hitting oxygen and you have voila, ozone. Then you use it strategically in the body. So lightning itself is something I became aware of a long time ago as a very powerful alchemy, as is oxygen, hydrogen, magnetism. We know about Rife and frequencies. But the alchemy of lightning itself, I understood it in ozone. And then many years ago, I came across an electrostatic charge therapy called the e-power machine, which puts you basically in a lightning field. You literally wear a belt and you juice yourself up, and it's like you're sitting in lightning. So I was very aware of this therapy for 20 years, and I used to put my clients in this field every time I treated them. And a half hour later, the field would soak into the body, and the acupuncture work would really take off. So it's really common sense, but this therapy came out of Asia, out of Japan, I believe, or China, I'm not sure. And they're, into acupuncture and Chinese medicine. So the idea of using it as an adjunct for acupuncture makes total sense, because you're trying to get the energy to move as deep as possible throughout the entire body and unblock blockages when you do acupuncture.
That's
But the idea,
interesting, and so it's kind of a sister treatment or brother treatment to I've seen something called a DDS, where the practitioner actually electrifies himself and then works their way through different acupressure points and places that are significant in Eastern medicine. It's been I think that's amplifying the practice of qigong, where you're charging up your hands and moving that energy around.
Right.
And I mean, it annoys me because even when I start saying things like that, I can hear the Western medical doctors get upset about it. It just upsets their ears. But here's the thing, man. We're getting into the new physics paradigm. All this stuff is real. It's being proven in labs now. It's based on the laws of static electricity. When you're not grounded for a really long time, you build up charge in your body, and it jumps off your finger as a lightning bolt. And as an electrician, I can happen to tell you that that's in the multi-thousands of volts. That static electricity bolt, it's like 20,000. It's a huge amount of electricity in terms of its power to push through. The amplitude is low, but the voltage is extremely high. It's very, very real. And this is essentially, I think, the fuel of life itself. So the fact
I just want to be real simple, because I'm a therapist, and I recognize that if you can get fields to penetrate deep in the body and they're healing, that's very needed. The body's very stagnant, particularly with aging and disease. The e-power machine had a lot of good marketing. They had a great video that described the electrical potential of a cell going down when you're sick, and it would bring the electrical potential, like a little mini battery of the cell, back up. But honestly, the cells, I try to get very simple. Like I would say a cell gets gunked up, meaning it gets it's not vibrating, it's got toxins. So there's like therapies that pump the cell membrane to try to get it to move, and then you're trying to feed the cells in various ways with various of these therapies, like the hydrogen therapy, which we both are fans of, is
Yeah.
a very, very permeable. In other words, it's the most permeable microcellular therapy. So I want to be clear with my audience. I mean, there is a definite treatment vision around this, and it's hard to get across because people aren't trained to think in a very simple, obvious, energetic, and structural and organ system.
I'm
So when
feeling
we say
attacked here.
so when we say chi stagnation, I mean, I like for everybody to start thinking in common sense and understand that first of all, the body does get toxic, but there are energy flow systems like the circulatory, the lymphatic, and Western medicine. We have to make sure that those don't get clogged up. The cells can get clogged up. These are very loose terms. But we want energy to flow. We want every piece of the system to be as vibrant and as transactional as possible. When you're young, everything is sort of, you're more integrated as a one being but when you get older, things start to break apart. Let's say you get an organ that's going bad, it sort of gets isolated out of the system, and then the rest of the system has to compensate. So this is going on all the time. We're trying to constantly figure out really how to get back to a whole dynamic being as much as possible. And that needs to be your vision. The system is cannot, if your liver's screwed, you're going to die. If your kidneys are screwed, you're going to die. So so we need to figure out whole body therapies that are both what I call macro, in other words, from the outside in, so to speak, and then what I call micro, which this is more of a microcellular therapy, meaning it can permeate into the cell deeply and you can treat strategically at a cell level. There's not that many therapies that go into the cell literally as a field. So think
As an
about
electric
it,
field, yeah.
right. One of my simple things, and I want the audience to really think simply and intuitively. I always say, imagine you could hoist yourself up into the middle of a thunderstorm, 10,000 feet in the air, and just sit up there for an hour. Instinctively, this is going to really purge and charge your system. And
Right.
that's essentially what these therapies are. They're mini lightning therapy sessions. But you need to understand it's the alchemy of lightning that's where this all begins. Now, the e-power machine that I used for years had different features, whereas this system, and these are critical. So the e-power machine would soak into the body think of it like a soaker hose in a garden, and it ran at 75,000 hertz or 70,000 hertz. This therapy is electrostatic, but it runs at 300,000 hertz. But this is most important. It's not a soaker hose. It spins in a vortex. The original inventor of this therapy figured out how to create a vortex spin, which means it drives in. It's like having a garden hose on a soaker hose phenomena, or you turn it to an aggressive, what do you
Well,
call it?
I have an example right here of nature expressing itself in homeostasis. And what do we see? Do we see a straight line here? Do we see anything other than a vortex? We're surrounded in electrostatic interference. We have Wi-Fi, telephones, the 120 hertz this, 60 hertz, 120 volts, lots of amps running through the walls all the time. These electric fields are not necessarily in tune with nature. Like going up into a thunderstorm and then standing in a transformer yard are two completely different things. One's going to kill you, one's going to charge you. So, let's start from the beginning. I've been using this machine for about a month. I'm just following what you told me to do, and I've had some really interesting results. But like, how do you start with an ESC machine, and what's it for?
Hey, let me just finish up real quick so I just want to be crystal clear. So this technology had that one additional feature, which is huge, of the ability to drive into the body. So when you first start treating, we can get into this right now, you treat the kidneys. So the philosophy is that you have to get the kidneys functional to handle detoxification. Then you treat the liver, which is also critical. Then
So
you
you
can
start with the kidneys.
kidneys first, then liver. Now, this ability to treat the kidneys and this technology wouldn't exist if it didn't spin in a vortex. The other technology was a soaker hose. It didn't, you could put it right over the kidneys. It would not drive into the kidney. So the ability for this therapy to penetrate and drive into the body is what makes it exceptional. Okay, so that's critical to what's the spinning vortex. So the 300,000 hertz frequency they found it's mostly an electrical field with some frequency to it. Now there is one coil in that kit with the white filter blocks that's literally a pure electric field, and I rarely use it because it doesn't drive as much, because you compromise. If it's more pure electric, you don't get the drive in. So you need some electromagnetism as a driving agent. Now, so let's get into, I want to just quickly, and we'll get into how to use this. So once I figured out, this is very imperative. People will call who is sick. The Chinese use that term. They're very, let's forget Chinese language. They're very toxic. Their whole terrain is toxic. Their colon is toxic. Their lymphatics are toxic. They might have autoimmune diseases because they can't get rid of pathogens. They might have candida. They might have low-grade viral infections. And they have no clue as to how to fight the battle to change their body. Now, the number one swampy terrain, obviously, is the colon. So we can do like rectal ozone insufflation, which is very powerful. And this is where integrative therapies are very critical. What this therapy does is it can follow up. If you do a blast of rectal ozone insufflation, it can go a long way on changing your toxic colon terrain. But you might have to do it twice a day and really go at it. And it's very harsh. And you still don't have a therapy that you can do consistently over 3, 4, 5, 6 hours if need be. This therapy can be done for long periods of time once you break in, and we're going to get into how to break in. But you have to work up, because if you're in a toxic, swampy terrain, you can't just go bam. You could. That's called like jumping in a fire and purifying yourself. You will be purified. But,
Right.
and even in Germany, they have protocols where they heat you up, like for Lyme disease, to near death. But that still doesn't really rekindle a very healthy, non-swampy terrain. So let's be clear, one of the goals in all these therapies is you got to figure out, okay, I'm going to detoxify the body, but what's the main center of toxification? Number one is the colon. So you got to have a strategy, which most people are trying to do. I've done millions of, well, not millions. I've done many, many colon programs. I've studied them. The end game of a healthy colon, good luck trying to achieve it if you have crappy microflora. So this therapy will contribute to the rebuild of colon health, which in turn will help tremendously with all your autoimmune inflammatory diseases. But you have to have a very patient understanding of what you're up against, use these therapies integratively. And this therapy, like ozone, is lighting therapy, and when done properly, you can do it over months and months and months of doing a combination of all these therapies. If you're very sick, will change deeply your internal terrain. So let's get into the critical piece here is if you're very sick, we have to evaluate when we start how reactive you are. So we're going to prepare the kidneys and the liver no matter what, which according to the original inventor, most people's kidneys are screwed. I had a woman who started in a very gentle setting, and she was peeing black urine the next day. That's how bad it can get when you start treating the kidneys. And by the way,
if the kidneys are bad.
And by the way, her eyes had a twinkle on them after a few months, where she was so toxic, and she had no clue what she was doing. She had no vision quest, and this frustrates me.
Well, I mean, like we just had a person on the show that grew up in a town in Colorado that was downstream from a literal ammunitions factory, and they were dumping nuclear waste in the river and poisoning the whole town. They all knew about it. They all knew that they knew about it, and they just either paid people off or demoralized them enough that they made them think that it was normal. So, I mean, you could be relatively what you think is healthy, but just in the wrong place. And
I agree. And we're all in the wrong place. And all my teachings are geared to one thing: build an awesome home clinic and have a defensive grid at home, starting at body, mind, physical level. And the energy system is huge. But But also, again, this is a pragmatic tool for massively pulling toxins. And I don't, if you want to schedule a consult, we can discuss all the different levels of detoxification you need to do. Because one thing, I'm always honest. What will this do and not do? And every tool you have to understand what it's. You don't buy a tool with the illusion that it's going to do everything. That's called marketing. A lot of holistic people do market the illusion by, do this one thing and everything will be okay, and it's just horseshit. Sorry, it's work. It's work. I mean, I never knew a car mechanic that would pull out a tool to fix a Ford, and he's trying to fix a Toyota, and think it's going to work. Whatever specialty tool of some, or anybody thinks a hammer is a screwdriver. But for some bizarre reason, when it comes to our health practices, we are as dumb as you know what. And this is on us as individuals to wake up. Take what I say with a grain of salt. If you want to go buy the miracle fix, go right ahead. I mean, it's very seductive.
Well, I mean, right now we live in an age where personal responsibility is absolutely paramount, as there are snakes in the grass. Like, let's face it, it's never been more obvious at this point that you really do need to take your own health into your own hands and research responsibly and seek people that are ethical. So.
So real quick, I just want to make it real simple. Detoxification is definitely a huge part of this technology. So they're developing the kidneys, developing the liver. If you want to go more subtle and you want to learn a little more elaborately what that means to detoxify, I'm happy to work with anybody to break it down more deeply. But everybody agrees that you need to detoxify yourself from heavy metals, chemicals, and auto-intoxication means your colon's a mess and you've got a lot of crap dumping into your blood, basically, which can go to your brain or all over your body. So anybody in holistic medicine sort of has a colon health foundation. Most people, an energy flow foundation in the Chinese and Ayurvedic side. Excessive inflammation. We all have sort of the ABCs in mind, but we're not really honing in enough on these ABCs. So, just as an example. I had somebody, I get people with cancer, and it turns out they had a massive candida and their lymphatic system's all gunked up, and then they wonder why they get cancer. So I'm not saying that's always the case. Well, you're telling me exposure to enormous radiation can cause cancer.
Well, it's often environmental, and to try and trace it is like, where did you?
Well, no, I'm saying it's
20 years ago?
actually 80% of cancer, I would say, is more internal. Stagnation, toxification, pathogens. Okay, let's distinguish between external influences and what they call auto-intoxication, meaning your system gets gunked up and and pathogens take advantage of you. That's called terrain medicine. Your terrain supports pathogens. So you got to make your terrain change so the pathogens will never come. They can't come in. Like I always say, if you take the cancer out of someone's body and you throw it in the sun on a sidewalk for 5 minutes, it's gone. I mean, simple. So you need to become a sun in the sidewalk in the sun. But
that's easy to say when you when you live in Latin America or New Mexico, but there's a lot of people. They got 8 months of darkness up north, man. So how do they get their sun?
The internal terrain. In other words, so. Colon health is huge. We know the organs work towards detoxification. So we're definitely, according to the Russian inventor of the system, kidneys are number one for detoxification. We need to treat the kidneys. Now, the beauty of this therapy, unlike that e-power machine, is you can target directly towards the kidneys, and you will actually start to heal your kidneys. So you can be very
that's what I've been doing
on the kidney. What?
And that's what I've been doing. And
and you're 10 inches taller.
Well, I'm a lot. Well, I mean, this is why it's hard for me to vibe with the practitioners, because it gets so personal so quick. But let's put it this way: I've never been so regular in my life. Okay.
Right, because it's gonna permeate into the colon. Correct. Now, if you team that up, let's say you're really, really sick, then you're gonna combine it with rectal ozone insufflation, and your colon's going to have a huge epiphany. And by the way,
Yes.
anybody who, so I just want to be very clear because you guys do a lot of ozone and I work with, this actually came, originally I found out about this therapy through Russian ozone doctors.
Right.
So it is a cousin to ozone therapy. Again, it's a lightning with oxygen is ozone. This is lightning to make it simple directly on the body with some key parameters. So let's get down to, so once you understand this is a really high level lightning therapy that you can do skillfully and you can, unlike ozone, do for hours and hours a day. So you can
Right.
follow up on the ozone, blast yourself with the H bomb, but this is like coming in consistently for hours with whatever you want to call it. I use a boxing analogy. I call ozone the left hook. I call this the right hook. And it sort of can be used like a jab too, because you do it for so many hours. I
That's
have
right.
one other device here called the Clean 24, which you can actually wear on your body literally 24/7, but it's not as powerful and it's more like a jabbing away at the field. But I like the power. I mean, I'm going to come and try and knock you out in one punch. And
And that's the ozone then, right?
I would call ozone really,
And
that's
then
my,
the hydrogen therapy would be the hug.
yeah, the hydrogen therapy is what you do when the boxer is unconscious and bring him to the hospital and help him recover.
Okay, so I got this thing out of the
Oh, and
box
let's touch upon hydrogen real quick. These are all
Okay.
fire therapies. Fire, fire, fire. They're in a sense, so you want to antidote fire with water, and hydrogen is the great balancer. It's cell permeable. So anytime you do a fire therapy, it's like you want to tone it down with a nice, soothing, calming, anti-inflammatory, antioxidative stress therapy. Hydrogen is masterful at balancing these therapies. That would be, if you're setting up a clinic, get ozone, get this, get hydrogen, and then we can go from there.
Yeah.
But let's get into the protocol. So once again, you treat, this is where the support comes in. Anybody doing this, I will provide the upfront support. We'll kind of review some of your health issues and tailor this therapy to work with your health issues. So the first thing is you treat the kidneys and you treat the liver in every session, 20 minutes on the kidneys and 15 minutes or so on the liver. Now,
Okay, let's back that up because I've just pulled this out of the box. I don't even know what I'm looking at here. Like, let's go through it thing by
yeah,
thing.
we're going to go through the coils and how to do this.
Yeah.
So that's the controller box. It has 10 power levels and it comes with four coils basically. So you're going to always start off with the most gentle coil, and then you can work the power up or down 10 power levels. But you start
Okay,
with
so I got these are the coils.
the bigger the coil, the gentler the field.
Right. Okay.
And so the big coil you'll start with, and
So this is the big one.
Right, that's a gentle coil, the most gentle. It'll cover maybe 4 or 5 feet. Right at the center of the coil is where the most concentration will be, but that will spread out quite a bit. So if you want to have a gentle field on your body, you're pretty healthy, that might just work fine in general, but usually we're trying to bust through a lot of blockages. But you can't go too fast, and again, we're going to start with the kidneys. So we take the big coil, and we go to if we're being very, very safe, the first session, we go to the lowest power setting.
Okay, so that's it looks like 100 milliamps. So that's
Correct.
Yeah. And there's a knob here. There's like a potentiometer on this thing. That's a fancy word for a power knob. It goes up and down, and you can adjust this to
100 to 1,000 milliamps.
Yeah, 100 to 1,000. So I'll put it at 100 right now.
Okay, so
And
then you just stick it on L1, lumbar 1 roughly. There's a test light to see that it's working.
yeah, it's on. So the test light is, you can actually see, even on the lowest power, I'm getting a reading and the camera's picking it up. So that's interesting.
Right. So you're going to put this behind you between your kidneys, which is around L1.
Okay, so that's going to be the L1 being lumbar 1,
Right.
which is the top. So I'd put it probably right kind of at the small of my back.
Right.
Maybe a little
Right.
higher.
I mean, you can look at go Google where the kidneys are located in reference to your spine.
Right.
But, it's obviously lower back region.
Yeah. And then this has got
Well,
a field that's wide enough that just putting it on your back is probably going to hit it then, right?
it's going to hit. Yeah, it's going to spread out. I mean, if you're very, very healthy, it will get through more, you'll have less blockages.
Right.
So,
So the machine does come with a coiled LED, and this is handy because it'll show you that it's on at all. So I'm going to crank it up to full power just for a demonstration here. But you can see when I hold the LED over the coil, you can see it turning on.
right.
The camera is picking it up, and as I raise it up, it does eventually lose the amplitude enough to drive the resistor that's making the LED work, but there is still a
Right. I
field coming
mean,
out.
honestly, you just run that over any coil you use to make sure it's working.
Yeah.
And that you don't need, I mean, you can play, you're going to see obviously it's good, a more powerful field that you can go further away. But just one thing, the bigger the coil, the larger the distance, but it's a weaker field. And then
Right.
as you get into the smaller coils, for instance, pull out that white donut coil, that's the most powerful.
So this
This is
is
the most,
interesting.
yeah, that's called a toroid coil or a donut coil. It's the most powerful coil. You can be very careful. That's why we do support. You cannot crank that thing up. And by the way, it will not go higher than I think 600, or if you plug that in, you can't go max. There's a limit to where it'll go.
So because
But
I'm
that'll only go 5 to 6 inches, period. But it's powerful. So if you're trying to blast something out of existence, which I don't recommend haphazardly.
I've never used this one.
Oh yeah, that will. Let's
And
say you had a lung infection that was acute.
Oh yeah, I'm getting a reading on it on the test light.
So if you had an acute lung infection, this is where this comes in handy. It could save your life. You can't do ozone on the lungs. So what are you going? The best thing that I know to treat the lungs is actually a nebulizer with essential oils, like I use it with thyme oil if I ever feel really challenged. But getting into the lung cells, you tell me how you're going to do it. So if you had an acute lung infection, you would literally put that donut coil 2 or 3 minutes on wherever the intensity of the infection was, crank it all the way up.
Like, so how would you want to orient it so the donut is so this is the way that the energy goes, and we want to put it, like if I put it right here, it's going to be putting energy
It'll work,
this
yeah.
way. So not this way. Like I don't want to use the edge of the donut.
No, nobody does that usually.
I want to have it this way. And I did that with the light test. You get 0 reading whatsoever on the outer ring of
That's
all
a
of
good
them.
point in case somebody want to get cute. But you're going to go straight on that infection. Now, here's the danger of this. This is a very powerful system. Can't go there for 20 minutes. Now, there's a doctor and I know would say, you blast away if you're sick and dying. And I would say, yeah, let's say you had lung cancer maybe. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think this is the only thing that's going to work, but, you might extend the treatment time. There's a point to where you can only go so far. Now, I would encourage you to use both the next coil size down, the wood paddle. This is still quite strong. So you're going to
that's the one that I use. That's the one that I've been using.
Right.
It's this one. So this is, it's like in Goldilocks, it's the just right. That's the one for me anyway.
So that's quite powerful unto itself, but it's still regional in nature. The donut coil is site-specific, but you can overdo it. So if you had lung cancer, for instance, just as an example, or a big, massive lung infection, you would treat regionally the whole lungs with that wood paddle, and it would cover all the lungs, but then you would dial in with the donut coil. Now, keep in mind, once again, we're trying to build a terrain that's non-toxic. So you still want to treat the kidneys, because if you got a bunch of infection here and has nowhere to go, you got to figure out how am I going to create the pathways for stuff to move and leave. A lot of people, let's say, for instance, breast cancer, there's a lymphatic blockage, and then they get lymph cancer. So you got to think about the site being very, very dark, congested, toxic, isolated. How do you treat it and yet give it a way to move along and treat the surrounding area? So you want to treat the lymph system, you want to treat the entire the colon, the liver. You want to wake the body up so it has a way to fight these diseases and move things out. So
Okay, so
I'm just
let's
letting you
say
know
that
that the donut coil is very powerful, but you can't just,
yeah.
you could potentially blast a lung infection. It probably would diffuse, be less intense in that one spot, maybe take you out of crisis. But you know, you're gonna, maybe it'll morph to the sinuses. So you have to think, aha, well, maybe I need, colon goes, you know, colon toxicity works itself up to the head, then you get sinus infection. That, you know, works into the brain, the sinuses. So
I mean,
anytime
it's
you
almost
treat,
like the disease is looking for the path of least resistance.
the sinus is a big nest. Anytime you're
Yeah.
treating lungs, for instance, we got to do a sinus protocol. So this is getting a little more complicated because this gets into more of a consult. But please understand, if you're just blasting something, it's, you know, you want to support the whole network that's created this in the first place. But
Okay, so let's say that I'm using this paddle, and what I've been doing, is I'll watch a documentary or something, and I'll just lie on it with it on my kidney like this. What's actually happening? We have an electric field. I know that it's a like a vortex going in there, and it's hitting my kidney. How does this help my kidney work better?
well, again, this is something I've spent the last 10 years maybe, or 8 years, I don't know, looking
Yeah.
for therapies that get to the cell. This is getting to every
Oh,
kidney cell because the electrostatic field is so permeable, but it wouldn't be so permeable if it didn't have the driving vortex to drive it in.
gotcha.
Now, you know, and ozone is it, let's think obviously, this plasma electric field permeates. Does it permeate internally into the colon as good as rectal ozone? No. That gas, when you just blast away from inside out, will permeate even better into the colon. But as you say, you go and poop when you do this, so you know it's getting through. So it is permeable, but
Well,
it's
I
just
mean,
coming.
kidneys, urinary, and colon, it's all part of the waste removal
Right,
systems.
but you can't do ozone, for instance, and it's going to go past the kidneys. So
Hmm.
the exposure time is minimal. So this is going to treat the kidneys more directly and more powerfully than ozone. But if you're trying to treat the colon, shooting that gas up your butt is going to get into the colon terrain, and wow, it's going to be way more powerful than this. But that doesn't mean you can't follow up with this and get effective colon treatment. So most people really never get their colons proper. They don't they're suffering from so many consequential issues, and they never actually have experienced rectal ozone insufflation and how amazing it can be in changing the game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's we live in an epidemic of constipation. The very definition of of regular, according to the allopathic system, is literally constipated. Getting can you turn your speakers down? I'm coming through your end a bit.
I don't have any speakers to turn down.
There's the volume,
My
whatever the
computer?
volume setting. Yeah,
Is
turn the
that
volume
better?
setting about halfway, because my voice is coming out of your computer and then back into your mic.
Is that better?
Yeah, it should be. That's better. Yeah.
Okay, so once, you know, I've been doing this for years and I do understand how strategically lightning works. And it's just a matter of literally common sense saying, well, okay, I send a ozone gas past my kidneys for like 3 seconds. That's not going to be enough. But I literally go dead on with this electrostatic field on my kidney for 20 minutes. Yes, a lot more treatment on those cells within the kidneys. Now, if your colon's a mess, your goal is to get the colon right. If you know, so you've got to look at every organ system: the colon, the kidneys, the liver, the lungs, and just keep going. And then look at the various, what I call the microcirculation, the lymphatic system, the nervous system, the endocrine system. These are literal systems that are global to the body. So if you get the colon doing quite well, which this is huge for, then you're going to start moving along. And if the kidneys are working well and the liver is working well, you've made headway. So we're taking it step by step. And strategically, again, so this is what happens. We start with that big coil, and you're going to contact me, and then we're going to make sure you don't have a big reaction. And we find your sensitivity. So if day one you go at 100 milliamps on the big coil, nothing happens, we might bump it up to 300. You know, I would assess you in the beginning to see how toxic and challenged you are.
Right.
In nature cure medicine, they have like stages of illness. Are you stage one? You know, are you healthy, 30 years old, and have a little sniffle here and there? You know, if you were here and I took the Chinese pulse, I would know how vital your health is. How strong is your vital life force? How balanced? Let's say you have pounding energy, but you're anxious as hell. That's going to show up in the pulse. So having energy alone is not enough. It's you have balanced energy. So that's where I, you know, feel I try to do that over the phone if I work with you, sense your energy state and balance. Anyhow, also just to touch upon this, I'm very fascinated with what's called trauma because trauma is something that bogs down deep within you. It's subconscious, but it's there. And this works on the subconscious mind field, I should say, not let's not use the word mind. And the Chinese medicine system, the kidneys of fear. So in Western medicine, the kidney adrenals are, you know, have to do with uh, core energy. In Chinese medicine, also the kidney meridian is your vital life force that you're born with. It's like your power pack battery. How strong is your battery? So you're also recharging your vital life force when you treat with this system. And you're also working, if you notice, with the emotions, when you treat with this technology, you might notice a certain piece coming, a piece showing up, because it's going into the more subtle field where these traumas exist, and that's Chinese medicine. Why I love it, because it's nuanced. It's like you listen to a guitar player and you can hear the vibrato in his fingers hitting the string.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or a sax player that uses a lot of vibrato. And if you can tune into your body more that way and start feeling, you know, we say, well, pay attention to your feelings. You know, once you understand this sort of self-attunement process, this helps. This is almost like cleaning up the field or purifying the field and helping you do better spiritual or emotional work. It's real. Again, I use this technology with acupuncture treatments for years and body work because the communication would become more purified. So getting this field into the body allows you to do better spiritual, energetic work.
Well, geez, I better turn it on then.
So for instance, let's say you do have lung colon issues in Chinese medicine, that refers to grief. And if you notice as you treat, or you're treating the kidneys and you notice more anxiety, you know, you're diving into, let's say, states of trauma. Means you didn't resolve something. Essentially, something happened, you didn't resolve it, you didn't get the energy back to a sweet, balanced flow. So this is huge in all disease. People are suffering. That's why I love Chinese medicine, because it essentially says you got to get your energy flow back. You got to get your, what do you call it on? Your something on? I forget the term.
Your
But
groove on. Get your
yeah, your
groove on.
groove. By the way, that's in body work. Groove, the cranial sacral rhythm is the fundamental meditative groove of the bones going slowly in and out. So groove is very much part of life. This does help with the groove because it's so, it the inventor would say that 300,000 hertz is sort of like in the realm of a light enlightening or light. It's lightening literally things up, lightening therapy, making you lighter or enlightening you,
So
meaning it's
I'm doing it right now, and I can feel it heating up.
where you set it. Where's your power setting?
I have it at 300 to 350, but when I put it on my body, I'm actually affecting the reading on the other end. So it is a kind of a two-way thing going on here.
It'll fluctuate sometimes one setting.
Yeah, just
You should
one.
have no metal on your body, by the way. It'll pull the field. Um,
Well, I have a gold earring. Is that-
it's probably okay, but even so, I would take off all jewelry. ideally. Your headphones even could be
Well, they're
affecting it.
leather
Well, no, they have metal.
in them, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so ideally doing this therapy, you want to be a good distance away from anything metallic because it will affect something.
Right. I mean, if you have a titanium plate in your head, don't worry about it. It's gonna, metal will pull the field or distort it. I don't know exactly to what extent, um, but it doesn't mean you can't do it. But if you put it right over metal, it's gonna pretty well kill it.
Right.
Okay, so I mean, you could take a metal object and do what you did the other day and see what happens to the.
Yeah, I was actually using an orgone pyramid to see if there was any. So when I put
Right.
it on upside down, it didn't do anything, and then right side up, it had a rather large effect. I could see the milliamp reading went right down.
Wow. Correct. And so you take a big piece of metal, I'm sure it'll do that.
Yeah.
So the protocol, again, the reason uh, this is akin to ozone. You don't just jump in and go haphazardly. You have the acclimation phase. Then you have, once you break in and you know where you're at, then we make sure you're using it properly, and then we address your key health issues. And then hopefully we also include some integrative advice. So my goal always as a practitioner is to be as direct and honest with you about what you need, if it was any other profession, it just drives me nuts. People would not argue, a car mechanic would not argue what a good, complete auto shop looks like. He might not be able to afford everything, but he would never
Yeah.
argue with you. Like, I want 3 tools. So it's up to you to decide whether you want to buy into a comprehensive approach. It takes a bit of learning to you know to maybe get it, but we're always going to push integrative holistic medicine strategies. It's these technologies. We try to include some simple emotional somatic work that you can do at home, and then of course there's nutrition, detox, the whole 9 yards of. And I'm not saying these are the only tools in town, but I will, if you have other tools, I usually have tried or looked at most holistic tools on the market, and I can try to help you sort out what you're doing. You mentioned something the other day, I think it's very, very valuable about the placebo effect. And a lot of times people will get into a therapy and they literally will have a placebo reaction, but it usually dies down in about 2 to 3 months. So
Right.
rather than, and that's great. If you have that kind of transcendent meditative mind, go for it. You don't need buy anything. Just use your meditation powers. Um, but these tools are very consistent, very, what I call salt of the earth, holistic technologies. And if you use them properly on a daily basis, there is, yes, the mind is a mystery, and it's always good to clear blockages in the mind. I think this tool helps with spiritual work. But we're going to explain these tools that we recommend, because I call them really state of the art, foundational whole body therapies. So it's
Absolutely.
medical ozone's one. This is one. Again, lighting therapies. There are some others out there. I'm not saying these are the only ones.
There is a lot of money spent in keeping this stuff hidden, like millions of dollars. People have been killed over it, literally. We're looking at 100 and almost what 120, 140 years of research has been put into these devices at this point, in secret, over to the side, in the outlying spaces of scientific development. Our physics models have been updated now for those in the know. Everything you're taught at high school, university physics, a lot of it is just wrong, false, and misleading. If you don't, if you find that hard to believe, I don't care. That's the truth. And specifically, it goes right back to Rockefeller. He spent millions of dollars on media campaigns to push energy medicine away and replace it with pharmaceutical-based chemical medicine. It's not a conspiracy. It's not a secret. You can look that up. It's not even that hard to find.
Right, but
It's true.
I just want to please be clear. There's always going to be, even within ourselves, the gatekeepers, the forces of darkness. primordial ignorance, or Jesus, forgive them for they don't know what they do. There's
Right.
going to be also extreme people I've seen who believe and watch various spiritual teachers who feel the body sucks, let it rot away and die, and I'm going to transcend. And that's fine if you want to go. We don't live very long. But my feeling as a practitioner, you have a child, and I just say, well, let him die and go back to the one. If that's what you want, I mean, you're desperate, you want to save your kid's life. I've had a child recently, a year ago, I remember, who had severe asthma, was in the hospital every month. I mean, so I just say, I understand that there are spiritual beings that have been able to literally leave their bodies in this reality, but this is not, for most of us, pragmatic. There's sort of a middle ground. These are very kind and gentle therapies. But you are battling a lot of nefarious forces internally, programming. The environment reflects, a lot of greed, people living on a very base level, or people believe certain beliefs like, Western medicine, I just find, is a belief system, and people get mad at me when I say that because they always say it's science-based. But if you look at the science premises of their science experiments are based on a belief system. So they believe,
Yeah,
for
and I mean,
instance,
science isn't an ideology; it is a method.
right. So if you come in with a belief for your experiment and you believe the belief, you're going to be
Well,
working with the parameters of that belief. So
sure.
first of all, I would encourage everyone, to, you're going to have to do some serious inner work and meditation to develop a more what I call intelligent, holistic model. And by the way, I'm a work in progress all the time, but that's mainly looking at what I would call hardcore memory and how it affects health. And that's my number one passion personally, and really, and I work at that mostly because
Right.
I do see belief or memory or energy patterns that are very uh, to pull out of the system. They pull energy. They're like little black holes of a sort. And by the way, that goes to this technology. The inventor of this technology said, and let's get spiritual and pragmatic at the same time, that this actually works on field formations. He called them closed loop DNA formations, and it breaks the closed loop, and he said that was the root of disease. DNA closed loop formations. There's another teacher, and I don't know if it came from him or a esoteric Russian teacher who references something called eddy current medicine, saying that this actually treats, you might call them obscure thought field formations that are locking down and then hitting you like microprograms, and it breaks them up at the off body level, and then it translates into health and wellness. In other words, you're actually breaking up micro consciousness field formations, which, by the way, is my number one. If you think of going into a lightning storm, or you ever, actually try it,
Well, your brain your
you will
brain is a
feel
lightning
lighter. You
storm.
will feel like all the stuff that's been gnawing at you
Right.
it can't do it. So the fact of the matter is, if there are these micro fields of thought or consciousness or guilt or whatever you want to call it, this tends to break down their grip. So closed loop DNA formations, I have one video I call the grip of death, trying to explain how memory works internally and does all this intense stuff. So that's huge. The
Yeah.
mind is so critical to everything, and we don't have enough innovative. I mean, we hear about mindfulness, and there's various techniques, but we're not using enough alchemy, I don't believe. But it's coming along. There are more technologies dealing with
The,
how to
there's
break
proofs.
down
There's
programming.
mathematical proofs. There's mathematical proofs coming out now showing that alchemy is absolutely real. A lot of it's Walter Russell. I know Terrence did us all a great big favor of putting that name out there into the world. Walter Russell rather was who Einstein really wished he was, and Nikola Tesla, recommended Walter Russell to everybody. He said everybody should read everything this guy has done. He's a genius, and that's coming from a genius. So It does relate with this. It does relate with the vortexes. It does relate with the reality that our conscious is not entirely just a water balloon inside of our skull, but it is an interaction of fields inside and outside of our bodies at all times. And I mean, how many people go down to the ocean every day in the morning and go for a walk because it makes them feel good. Why does it make them feel good? They are grounding and they are breathing in structured water air with a lot of life and energy in it.
And going in the water. So,
and even, yeah.
Because of the salt and the ionization.
Exactly. Yes.
And the fact, I mean, honestly, I have something called on my website called the Bluesy Bath that mimics a hot spring, which I need to do more of myself. Sometimes I forget. But why is it good to be in a hot spring? It just is. So why is lighting good for health? It just is. Try it.
Yeah, and we're getting to the reasons of why it is. But here's the thing: what's the downside? What are the side effects? This isn't chemical medicine. This isn't pharmaceutical oil-based drugs that cause more damage than they fix. This is. I mean, I've had this thing turned on the entire time. I've fallen asleep with it on me for a couple hours. Not at full blast, but also I'm a young guy. You said that there was actually that you can overdo it with this machine.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I guess if you're really fragile or something.
Oh, you're cutting out, Sean. Sean, you cut out. You cut out.
Check 1, 2.
There you go. You're right back in. Okay.
Oh, I didn't lose you on my end. Anyway,
your internet connection is unstable.
Is it?
Says mine. How can mine be? Hold on, let me do a speed check.
You're okay now. You're okay.
Let me just go to Google here. Hold on.
No. You're fine. You're fine. Don't bother doing that.
Sure?
Yeah. You're good.
Okay. All right. So
you're
the reason we do support is because since you really, first of all, you're not probably doing a lot of integration. We want to assess you. We want to make sure you don't get in trouble. We want to make sure you step along properly, and then the initial phases we want to monitor your results. So it's like, hello, I'm getting to know you. It's like throwing an athlete out there, and having him do 2 hours of heavy duty exercise and they have a heart attack on the field. So we want to really be careful. Number one, we want you to be mindful of what this is. And hopefully get excited and then kind of start to have a different visionary approach to your wellness and health. And part of the consult is always a little bit of orienting you towards what I call a deeper holistic model.
Yeah, and so let's talk about that for a second. Is we're doing I guess you could, I don't know if you want to do this forever, but for a limited time, anyone that purchases one of the ESC machines off our site, they do get a consult with you. That's included, right?
Well, no, they we go through an initial maybe week or two where we check in with you. Now, we'll explain, in other words, I want to follow up day 2, day 3, day 4, and then tweak the therapy according to each person's reaction. So we have to ascertain how sensitive you are. And the only way you really fully know, I mean, you can go under, but if you go over and have too much reaction, it's not very pleasant.
I'm not going to lie to you. I've been overdoing it. I say that I do it at 5. I put it at max. I blast myself, and I haven't had a single problem, man.
Right, but I don't.
In fact, I wish I could turn it up higher.
It could, I don't take, again, Chinese pulses would tell me a lot because they don't lie, but.
Well, my issue is stagnation in my root chakra.
Getting a little more anxiety from doing that much.
Okay, all right.
Again, it's interesting. You do hydrogen, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You can't ground with this because grounding is metal. It's like it'll short out the therapy. So if you're going to go for 4 or 5 hours on it, I mean, if you're very, very healthy, it'll just pass through your body. Nothing will happen. You crank it up. But most people have resistance, which the Chinese call qi stagnation.
Yes.
So if you have more resistance equals more potential problems. And then the question is, we're treating, if you think about it in a sense, on one level, all healing is just treating some form of resistance somewhere in the system. It could be organ resistance, system resistance, or deficiencies. There's excess. I mean, it gets complicated. Like if you're a low thyroid, that's a deficiency that this will not probably treat, especially if it's been a long time. So I want to be crystal clear. There's a lot of health issues in the manual that are listed and what to do. Again, I want you to develop, as we work together, sort of a more global, pragmatic treatment understanding. We want to figure out what your core issues are. So if you happen to be low thyroid, for instance, this is not going to, maybe if it's a week or two or a month or 3 months, maybe it would correct it. But, we want to clue you in what this will and won't do. And if you have, let's say, God forbid, cancer, then we want to hook you up with one of our practitioners and do a mat, or myself, but really, really start hitting all the tools together.
Yeah, yeah, the trifecta. So you have ozone, hydrogen, and the ESC machine.
And then, there's so much more I mean, one thing, just simply put, since most holistic medicine talks about toxicity and the colon is number one, once you get in there and you really blast into these terrains, now you want to rebuild the terrain. And we have a special, very high-end probiotic protocol, which is unusual because most probiotics just don't work. And by themselves, if you're very toxic and you just do probiotics, it's not going to work. So following up with the probiotics is critical, because then you can build a very strong gut health, vigilant gut terrain. But we recommend some really high-end specialty probiotics, which, by the way, this comes out of Russia. 2 of my probiotics were developed specifically for biowarfare in Russia. And they're two
That
of
is to protect against biowarfare.
Right. They were developed by the military was paid to find biowarfare.
That's an important distinction.
And they're tweaked up in a lab. And then I have another one that was tweaked in a lab in the U.S. that made billions of dollars, by the way, through a company called Garden of Life and Life Science. They marketed the hell out of this one American tweaked up strain. The Russians are more superior in my mind. This was one scientist who tweaked his up in the U.S. In Russia, they had a whole team of scientists. And then I know, just not that some people are against it or whatever, just to clue you in, I know Bo is really big on ivermectin. Ivermectin comes from soil bacteria. That's right. Literally its source. So the fact is, it's a soil bacteria derivative. Well, really not a drug anymore because you can buy it over the counter. But soil bacteria is very fascinating. But I'm telling you, that's a piece of the puzzle. Once your colon terrain is that toxic, you need these additional tools to do the heavy firepower carpet bombing of the region. Then you need the 24/7 vigilance of probiotics that work once they take a seat, if they can. And they will work and cut through a lot of toxic stuff. I mean, like a lot of these companies talk about, well, just take 20 a day. I mean, you're way better off doing ozone and this ESC therapy and the probiotics, then come in and do better. But right. You really need to clean the gut out profoundly. And some people are so compromised for 20, 30 years, they're never going to get there. So these are the heavy bombing therapies, and they're beautiful. When I say heavy bombing, I mean lightning is beautiful. It's not like mean or nasty bombing like drugs or chemicals. It's the power of lightning, which is a very healing alchemy, but you have to understand the integrations. That's why when we do the consult, we will try to put you on the best track possible. But then we will dial in on this therapy for a few weeks. Usually it's a text, once maybe in a couple of days you acclimate, and I just say, okay, slowly, I tell you generally what to do. Once again, that donut coil is very, very powerful. Here's a tip for most men. If you want to treat your prostate, stick that under your balls for about 5 minutes, and it'll shoot directly into your prostate gland.
Yeah, that's a big one for men, especially getting into their mid-30s and 40s. You don't want to ignore your prostate. There's a lot of chemicals in the environment, in the food, all around us that is designed to attack that specific area. And almost everybody has an inflamed prostate once they get into their 40s, it seems. I don't think I've met a single person in their 40s, other than practitioners that are extremely healthy, that doesn't have an inflamed prostate. So it's very much an epidemic. Guys don't like getting it treated. They're afraid to even talk about it. It's not worth not being able to go to your grandchild's 3rd birthday. So go get that checked out. And we have ways that you can regain your homeostasis, and that means putting your body back into its state similar to when you were a child or you're very young, where it's powerful and it wants to heal itself. The body wants you to live a long time, and it's going to do everything it can to do that if you give it the tools to do that in the alignment. And all these therapies, really play a strong role in that. And it's a lot of fun discovering it and talking with you about it. So, this has been a really great journey for me. I'm way healthier than I was 10 years ago. I feel younger. I have more energy. I'm a lot smarter, which, has pros and cons, I'm finding. But my ability to think about complex topics has increased over the past year and a half. And I think even in the past 3 months since I've been using this, which could be a side effect, I don't know. A lot of this energy medicine and the research surrounding it, again, was lit on fire by bad actors. So we're kind of on our, we're like cutting edge astronauts discovering new worlds with this stuff. And there's no real side effects that I've noticed. And the pro effects that I've noticed, which is, I've been dealing with some slight autoimmune problems and some bowel issues. Those are disappearing and almost gone. So it's really exciting stuff. That's my own story. That's my own anecdote.
Have you worked with ozone, by the way, yourself?
Very little because we usually, at our clinic, our practitioners use ozone basically for people that are in really rough shape. But a few people really enjoy it. I have done it a few times. I don't really like rectal insufflation, I find, but I think, it's a good reset button. It's a carpet bombing, like you said, and
Right.
once or twice a year for someone who's healthy, like myself, or more or less healthy. I like these kinds of things. I like the energy
This
stuff.
might be enough at your age. So again, we're going to assess your age, your state of illness. The more chronic, the more tools, the more time, the more focus. But we have all these great tools, and if you're willing, if your life's on the line,
or you just want to operate. You want to operate.
I have a lady who I met. She came to my clinic. I introduced her to all these therapies. She has 4th stage cancer, and she followed up, did some research, and she was on board. But then it became like, well, I can only afford this, and this is where she was buying in, but then it became a money issue, and I was going to give her a killer deal on everything. And I said to her, look, your life's on the line. Run some credit cards, plead with them afterwards. Plead with them afterwards that you were dying, and, give me a deal on the payback. But either way, I'm just saying, I wish everybody received money from insurance companies to do all this, like CPAP machines, for instance, but it's not the case. And, I implore everybody to build their home clinic as quickly as possible. I always say for the most expensive technology that I actually feel you could sidestep is called pulsed electromagnetic frequency therapy, which is very pricey.
Yeah.
This is not that expensive. It's $1,200. Medical ozone, for the price of 2 10-pass sessions, you could own a system for life. It's cheap as hell. Almost for the price of 1 session, actually, with some practitioners. Right around here, if you do 1 session of 10-pass ozone, it's $900.
Wow.
You can buy a system for $1,200. So that's for life. You buy this is for life, assuming you don't abuse it. Hydrogen for life. So if you're going to buy a car and Think of it as buying a cheap used car. Figure out a way as best as possible because your life is on the line. Your family needs you. You need you.
Yep.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So
And we're,
I'm
I think,
I'm just saying, build your clinic. You will never regret it.
absolutely not. It's a line of defense. And, whether you like it or not, a lot of people are under attack out there. And this is the first line of defense is yourself, your health, and your mind. So let's get to it, man. Andrew, that's an hour today. We're going to come back with some more
So just
conversations about these
can we
therapies.
review? I'm just going to review real quick. You start with the biggest paddle coil first, gentle setting. We monitor you. You work up to the next size coil. This is generally kidneys and liver every treatment. Then if you have issues, we can dial in, like say regionally on the lungs or the pancreas or whatever. Then if you really have an acute infection, you can strategically and carefully use the donut coil to really blast away. But
Right.
blasting away is not what we're trying to do generally. Okay, so it's easy to use, simple to operate, and really a powerful therapy.
Amazing. Yeah, so we're going to continue learning about that. For the time being, I am going to put the consultation info for you. It's included with every purchase of the machine. That might not be forever. So people,
Right,
I
it's
implore you to take
limited.
advantage of that
Right,
because
it's
Andrew's
not
making himself.
ongoing. It's not ongoing, comprehensive, holistic consults, although sometimes it'll overlap while we're talking. I'm pretty generous to cover some issues. I'm not going to spend 3 hours doing elaborate holistic consults. Sometimes people send me their lab reports, but basically the support is to get you acclimated, comfortable, and make sure you don't overdo it. That's the built-in support, and it doesn't really take that long with most people. You get the hang of it pretty quick, but those first 3, 4, 5, 6 days are important.
Absolutely.
And then
And
just get the feel of the therapy. Then from there, depending on how far you want to go and in your work, we can look at other things.
so I've been using it on my brain.
Okay. Well, there's something called ear ozone insufflation where you go through the ears with ozone and goes straight into the brain, very, very activating. And I always find that I have to balance that with hydrogen insufflation, but it will break up once again stagnation. So if you have a lot of, or if let's say you've got, like RFK said he had worms in his brain. People have had literally worms in their brain, or they have a fungal infection, or God
Sure,
forbid,
yeah.
if you get encephalitis, you can die within hours. But so ozone will go in and cut through a lot of stagnation, but it also is very fiery. So then we use the hydrogen to offset the fire. Taking this on the head and moving it around. Excellent. It's not as fiery as, let's say, ozone ear insufflation. So it's always nice to have the hydrogen, but it can break up blockages. If the brain's complex, it might help with neurochemical reactions. The brain is extremely complex. So
Yeah.
would it help with the lymphatic? With the lymphatic system is the ability for the brain to clean itself? I believe so. They do. If you look in the literature for recommended treatment protocols, yes, stroke, post-stroke, it's recommended. It's
Okay,
going to
so
go into a cell. Let's be clear. It's
yeah.
lightning in the cell, cuts through the cell and kind of helps it actively figure out its healing. In other words, if it's stagnant, gunky, it's not moving, this is going to go in and wake things up. Hydrogen will then come in a very soothing, calming way and help the cell or the body figure out its own healing. So these alchemy therapies, and each way, it's like, somebody's like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an obvious example of somebody's very sluggish and you kind of tell them to go for a run and they feel better, whatever, or somebody needs to be calmed down. It's very Ayurvedic in a sense, the power of fire to cut through things. What's that mean to you? The power of water to go to the microcellular level and calm things down. What does that mean? What is the power of hydrogen? We know it's the unifying element of all elements. So can't argue with nature.
That's right. That's right. So we can talk about the interplay between the ESC and the hydrogen, because the hydrogen is like the water and the ESC is like the fire kind of thing.
And since they're both lightning, ozone and ESC are lightning therapies, which are very, very, there's a term used, pro-oxidative stress. In other words, they might create oxidative stress responses, but it's the power of fire. If you go burn leaves in your backyard and by accident, oops, you burn down your house, you bring a garden hose.
Right.
And then in a sense, hydrogen, and this is for all ozone practitioners, every ozone practitioner, before they go do ozone, should have their client at home doing hydrogen. It's like having a rain in a forest before you light up the match versus light up a match and all California burns down.
Yeah.
So super dry terrain we don't want, in Ayurvedic medicine, you don't want excessive inflammation. But on the other hand, the fire element has its purpose, a fever, for instance, when you're
Yes.
sick.
Yes.
So you could call it false fever therapy, but you got to look at it specifically. If it goes into the kidney to start, it's going to help the kidney function better. It's going to break up the stagnant cells. The kidney is going to become younger and healthier. And then you can detox more effectively, just as a starting point.
All right. Awesome. Okay, that's about time for today. Thanks for joining us, Andrew. I'm gonna edit the hell out of this, so we'll pick out the good parts, and most of it's pretty good. And for the next show, do you have anything? I didn't even look at that document, but
Hydrogen.
Hydrogen. All right.
I would
Sounds
like
good.
to, hydrogen standalone, hydrogen as an integrative therapy, like we just discussed. And every time you allude to what hydrogen can do, and in a more dynamic way, I think it brings credibility to the therapy. Even if somebody doesn't quite know about ozone therapy, you're expanding their horizons, and that's the whole thing. Get people to think. It's like if you just think I'm a guitar hero and you just you never thought of a bass or a drums. I mean, it's like crazy.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
I'm a sax player.
I
All
remember
think
I
about
got
is
it.
piano.
Yeah, so my friend lent me his bass for a little while, and I'm a pretty half decent guitar player anyway. I know my way around, and I remember just not knowing what the hell I was doing at all with the bass. It's a totally different instrument. Sure, you put your fingers in sort of the same places and whatnot, but the language itself and where you fit in is completely different than guitar, and I really
Well,
had to
listen,
think a different way. And that's your hydrogen to ozone, and that's your ESC to hydrogen to it's like all of these are languages that work together, and that creates the sound, of the band,
listen
the
to
great band.
like the blues guys, Stax Volt guys, the Motown guys. If you want to stand out to play a bass,
Yeah.
I mean, it's such not Stanley Clark or some of those Jaco Pastori freaks. That's not
Well,
listen to
yeah.
the groove. Listen, not the. I know a guy around here. He used to play with Spyro Gyro. He's such an asshole.
Oh,
He
wow.
thinks he's hot, but he can't play. It's just a bunch of gibberish as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I see it like there's two different kinds of player. There's like circus performers, and then there's musicians, right? And sometimes there's blur between them. If you're a good musician, you want to have a little bit of the circus, but there's a lot of guys that are all circus, and there's no musician there. And I don't know, some people like them, some people like it,
And there's an
but
analogy in spiritual work too, which is very interesting because there's the purity of spirit. Let's say in cranial psychotherapy, you can't argue with the groove. Just
no.
a no content meditative movement of 10 seconds out and in. But yet when it comes up against all the crap, it helps. It's so wise. And, in a sense, that's like divine spirit is its own integrity, that when it hits our bullshit, things seem to work. It's like trying to bring things back to the one, so to speak. But and then
The
I guess
one
my
being
analogy.
hydrogen, by the way, or protium. Hydrogen is group. Protium is the most simple form of the group that we refer to as hydrogen. That's going to come out more and more.
And
I'm like
I mean, is there a
maybe,
protium therapy?
well, hydrogen is protium. Protium is hydrogen. It's just the simplest analog, you could say, or isotope.
Right. And, you know, I do kind of ascribe to the fact that we are all in the one, but we forget, and then the mind makes things, creates many forms and complexities, which we get lost in.
Well,
But
again,
it's,
okay,
but
everything, and I mean everything, every rock, tree, mineral, solid form, everything is hydrogen, is a form
right.
of protium. The periodic table of the elements separating everything has been laid
But
out incorrectly.
I think the mind transcends the physical.
Uh huh.
So now the question is, I still believe the work is I mean, with most humans, they're suffering at some level of the mind, but these therapies definitely support, you know, that sense that you called, going back to like that innocence. So we know
Mm.
innocence is closer to who we want to be.
And
So
that's
it's
what
interesting.
that you start out innocent. Literally, you have no choice in the matter. No baby is born evil. They're, even right. Maybe toddlers get a little dark sometimes, but the point is babies are, that's as close to one as you're ever going to be, and you're further, you turn from dialectic to magnetic as you age, and that's just and the longer that you can hold your dielectric charge, which I suspect, I would hypothesize that this is a dielectric machine that helps your dielectric flow and takes away, like the magnetic, when you start getting too magnetic, that's when you grow out the waist. People get fat at the waist. When they age, they get big anyways. That's just part of the reality of
Well, I
our
mean, it's
electromagnetic
funny,
existence.
the pulling into the center, which some people would describe as the ego, but the center, what's in the center, when we look, nothing. But yet we're pulling it. There's this sort of an old story about that where it's a mystic master story, running around with a closed hand, and when he opens it, there's nothing there, but everybody's attracted to what's in there, what's
He's
in
got
there, in a
something in his
sense.
hand.
So the mind, in a sense, has invented a reality that has no content ultimately, but it's hung up around that. So there's so much mystery in all this. I do feel these therapies imply innocence for sure.
Right. And I mean, okay, so, going back to my baby innocent analogy, yeah, the baby's innocent as its soul form here, but there is something called, what is it? Ancestral trauma, epigenetic memory. And we can talk about, I know that's a big thing in your practice, isn't it?
Right. I mean, the way I best understand it, and even in the work I do, I work with the shadow. There is no work other than with the shadow. And the shadow is what the mind invented. The question is whose mind and who invented it, and where are you downloading it? The shadow. Are you creating it totally yourself, or are you downloading it? You know, it's like a co-creation. I mean, there are people egging you on to create images and thoughts, but at the root of it, I pragmatically speaking, I'm, I have to keep coming back to fear, trauma, the nervous system, sort of a body worker's model of why would you contract? I call them sort of consciousness posture positions. So your job is to look at those postures at the micro level that you created micro. I mean, I've seen people with gross posture literally deformed, like twisted, or ever hear of these spine diseases where you got a big S curve. This is all in the mind, I believe. So you're trying to look at all those fear created, something hit you. It's so simple. I mean, somebody believes in something, they slam it on your head and tell you to believe. And it's absolutely meaningless. It has no real content. But they believe it. They want you to believe it. Now you're in this fear-based, well, if you don't believe like I believe, I'll mess you up kind of thing. So, um, the body's trying to break down these micro postures, which I would call thought formations of beliefs, or not the body. You have an instinct to break these up, and these therapies contribute. That's chi. This again back to Chinese medicine.
Yes, and
You're
the
trying to
Chinese
get
medicine, the
energy.
qi, the Western physicists that are in the know are catching up. Qi is real. It's absolutely factually real. It's not magic. It is based on the laws of nature and electricity, and it has a form, and it is absolutely a real thing. And the Eastern systems, a lot of people don't realize that they think the Pyramid of Giza is Egyptian and that pyramids are Egyptian. They're not. They were all over the world, and most of them, in fact, were in China. And a lot of the oldest records that we have, based on geometry and mathematics that we've found in nature, like the golden flower, and you see it all over China, by the way. The what is it, Metatron's cube formations, and in their sculptures, and in their, like, they've had the knowledge for a long time. The Chinese are, historically, they have one of the most richest histories that hasn't been totally razed and burned to the ground. They still have a lot of this knowledge, and it exists in the Eastern medical systems. And I think we really need to take a hard, long look at these systems with an open mind, and we're going to find it's going to wrap itself around. We have, the Western scholarly tradition and the Eastern Qi system. It's going to come around, and they're going to become one again very soon. It's already one in my head. I've got to, I'm getting a good handle on it. I'm learning a lot. I'm not talking about it too much right now because I'm still in the discovery phase myself. I encourage everyone to get into the discovery phase. And don't be afraid, man. Don't be afraid. Don't worry about what other people are going to think or if it's too far out. It's an exciting time to be alive, to have this kind of technology. The 120 years, you're not supposed to know about this. You're not supposed to have this in your house. There's a lot of money that's been spent to keep this away from you, keeping technology that heals you away from you. And it's a really great time that we are able to get it out there and educate people about it. Well, we can, because this may not be available forever. So definitely check it out on the
And
site.
just real quick, if you're going to use this meditatively, I mean, I really wish there was a way to check in on yourself other than you can check in, obviously, where is the tension in my body, what emotions are playing. Pay attention to that. If you're doing, let's say, chakra work, um, let's say you feel a lot of tension in the solar plexus region. Well, that's also right over the pancreas, which has to do with overthinking in Chinese medicine, spleen, stomach, pancreas. And right next to it is anger, liver. So think, oh, well, maybe my liver's toxic. Maybe I'm overthinking. Oh, let me just hit the pancreas, see what changes. Am I more relaxed? So try to correlate these organ systems with emotions, with thoughts. Look at the Chinese map of organ meridian system. Look at the associated emotions. Then take this therapy, and you can place it over various strategic points. And notice if you're thinking less, or if it's spleen, stomach, pancreas.
So,
Notice if you're
so,
less sad if you treat key grief points. Now, this, as a body worker, this is yet another tool to hit key energetic centers. So I'm always doing this. I have a map of the emotional body, the processing body. So we're trying to process things that we didn't process. At the end of the day, the best processors are ultimately the healthiest people.
that's right.
So this is a processing tool, as is hydrogen. Hydrogen is such a beautiful processing tool because it goes everywhere into the body and sort of says, okay, one, organize, one. And its nature in the body is kind of beneficent. I feel like it's a mothering therapy. So anyhow, this is hard. If people want to meditate, use the alchemy tools to help with your meditation.
Absolutely. I love using the ESC machine while I put on a 111 Hertz chakra meditation. I really enjoy that. And it's interesting because I find the charge, we have the little lights on here showing the milliamp reading. See, I'm turning it up and down. Hold it like this and you can see it a bit better. I actually see this charge changing as I vibrate and it's touching my skin. So I am changing the conductivity of my body based on vibrating. It's really interesting. It's something that I made up for fun, is to try actually humming, and eventually you get your whole, you got the resonation cavity here in your heart, and then you go and you hum the specific tones because there's different ones that you want to use. Different thing, they do different things. Eventually all the blood in your body is going to pass through that resonation chamber, and now your entire body's resonating, and it affects the conductivity of your body because everything is just a wavelength. Electromagnetic spectrum all the way down and up again is audio, light, all the five senses that we have. It's
Right, and
all just
every
vibrations.
negative memory or blockage definitely has a energy signature to it. So why not get back? If we knew this when we were 5, 4, 7, 8, whatever, wouldn't that be wonderful? We have parents that, oh, look at him, look at his, show your energy field and put you through an energy treatment. You never be in this state. But you just stayed in that energy field. It became, you couldn't change it, so you built thoughts. You tried to work with it. So we're really going to an authentic language to take stuck, unresolved energy states and change them. And when you do this, by the way, if you do this for consciousness, and I'm 70, and I notice it's lighting up layer by layer. It doesn't go away all the way, but all kinds of memories will flood up when I do these specific therapies. And then I'm just a little saner, a little more organized, a little lighter. Before that, it was just one chaotic field, another chaotic field. I didn't have anything to do, no one taught me any therapy to work with isolated chaotic fields. So this is field therapy at a high level, and then learn to think field therapy with everything you do. Well, we love to teach this approach.